Hello folks, so I had some time off this week and figured I'd delve into this specific, niche, but oh so fun and interesting hunter setup. It's, Bladesaws. So yeah, let's go dive it. Now, a disclaimer before we begin. Bladesaws, be they traditional two-handers or the one-handed ones we introduced recently, are not meta by any stretch of the imagination. They pull hunters into melee range, and the skill sets don't really support this. What's more, they don't deal quite as much damage as shiny endgame guns. Still, they're fun for what they are. So I'll use this visual crime to solve the riddle of how to make this build work, and slice off Moloch's ankles as the title promises. So we'll be using a marksman for this run, although engineers would probably be the safest choice, just for the extra fun in quotation marks. So let's begin with gear. I'll be using Blackheart in this run, but it's pretty much interchangeable with Rebellion. I've chosen this one for more basic PvE efficiency due to phase, while Rebellion is likely better for bosses themselves due to Ignite. So, what do Bladesaws do? They buzz, mostly. Damage isn't stellar, and the skill set mostly doesn't synergize with them. The first part of my thought process then is to make use of them as much as possible, so I've augmented skills on them for more options, then stuffed exploding spikes where I could. Namely, one augment and one mod each. They have a constant fire rate, so they should go off fairly often. But that's likely not enough, so we'll need to add SFX in the mix. Ideally, I could use exploding spikes and ignite strengths in the same mod, but let's keep this realistic. So for that part, I'm using Sombergs for extra phase, and Curse Duration, so Beacon will strain my power pool less. Then I'll use Squadros Prism as a ring for Ignite, and I'll buff it through the Scorched Eye kit, the Affliction Expertise, and the Bellyful Bully achievement. The rest is pretty standard pieces: Fontaine, Stechaband, and Platinum Spans for power regen, and minor combat bonuses since we'll be using some explosives. Then Battlecore for use rate, Lancers for mobility and escape, and Death Stompers for shield penetration. It does help that many of these pieces also come with hefty shields, since that will be our primary defense. Finally, since we're going for some explosives, we'll be using Multishot, so a plus boost duration augment on each piece is pretty much the only non-stat augment we'll need. Then, since we mentioned explosives, off to the skills. As these named Bladesaws hint, the tactical stance tree actually supports them, so we'll max tactical stance for extra damage that affects spikes themselves, then Overshield, since it's the defensive star of this setup, and synergizes with the Bladesaws, shields, and evasion. Finally, Elemental Vision for even more SFX. Now, we could also get Rapid Fire. It won't increase fire rate itself, but Heightened Senses will increase damage, which also affects spikes. But it conflicts with Tactical Stance, and I found that the build needs to spread its points. You may of course try it, but it just didn't suit my tastes. Then we'll need Beacon. Ideally, you'd want to max this to buff damage output, but here I'm using it as a stepping stone to get Elemental Beacon. This one we're maxing, of course, for even more SFX. Finally, a point in Multi-Beacon suffices to get friendlier with crowds. As you can see, I'm also getting Multishot from gear. A single point suffices here, as we're only using it for explosives. Now, I could get it from the ring, but I'm a bit lazy. Finally, Demolitions bring the extra punch and let the build handle flying enemies. I've maxed strikes, but you may shave off a few points from one or more depending on your tastes. Then I grabbed a single point in EMP to remove those pesky shields, and grabbed Whiteout and Flash Crasher for some more safety. Finally, since I got grenades, I spent my final point in Phase Grenade for the SFX synergy. Here you could max Phase Grenade, but grenades I found are not quite reliable enough in this particular build. So that's how I've managed to make this extremely fun but very unsupported build work for me. The Bladesaw's rate of fire facilitates spikes and SFX, most notably Ignite. The skill set handles defense through escape and overshield, SFX through elemental vision and elemental beacon, and damage through strikes and secondary assets. Now, can it slice through all the endgame bosses? That's doubtful, to put it mildly, but still, this is enough to slice off Moloch's ankles with some effort. For reference then, and to conclude this video, enjoy this very clumsy run. Until next time, all the best.